America has been beset by a deluge of illegal immigration. I mean, we have an article here from NBC News, and this is even a left wing outlet, so they can't help but not report reality sometimes. This has reached a new record. So in 2022, it topped 2.76 million. We don't have the final numbers for 2023 yet, but it's because a fair amount of migrant caravans have been bussed up to the border, and the Biden administration have been very lax on border control, not completing Trump's wall. Within the first week of the administration, Biden said we're going to see a surge at the border, and various migrants have said Joe Biden is incentivizing me to come, because if the Democrat cities are just providing handouts in their sanctuary cities, if you're in the third world, you're poor, of course you're going to take the treacherous journey, probably with illegal smugglers, and risk your life to make a better life in America. It's not wise in terms of your own public safety, personal safety rather, but we shouldn't be shocked that the incentive pressures are driving people there. So these are just the ones apprehended, of course, nearly 3 million encounters. Some will have slipped through the net. But the reason this is being reported on, the reason this has reached a critical consciousness, is because people have noticed that their flights are full of illegal immigrants. In the last few months, we've seen a lot of videos going around on Twitter saying, why am I in first class on Delta and American Airlines, and there's someone from Honduras with all of their belongings in a plastic bag stamped from the migrant processing center with their boarding passes with no name given on it, sat right next to me when I've paid to be here? And it's because it seems that the Biden administration, various NGOs, and various state governments are all in cahoots to ship nameless adults and unaccompanied children who are illegal immigrants apprehended at the border from border states to Democrat states to try and fudge the population numbers ahead of the 2024 election.
That's your taxpayers' money hard at work there, America. I know we're not one to talk in Britain, but
well, yeah,
it's very frustrating.
Proportionate to size, I mean, our problem is a lot worse, but you're being demographically and electorally displaced. So be very aware of this. So I thought I'd do a roundup for everyone's benefit so that the evidence just becomes irrefutable. And if people say this is a conspiracy theory, you're welcome to send them this video. So it started with Ashley St. Clair.
Hi folks, sorry to interrupt the video, but I just wanted to announce that we have a new line of merch in our merch store. The merch store was kind of empty for a while, and so I thought, right, okay, what do I actually want on shirts? And so I just went through some of the most epic and true things that I think that historical people have said, and John managed to make an amazing set of merch out of it. And we will have extra things coming in the store, such as posters for these to go on. Thanks for everything, folks. Now back to the video.
She was waiting in a line for a Delta flight at Phoenix Airport, and she just said, well, look at this line. It's full of illegal immigrants. I can tell it's full of illegal immigrants because they're holding bags from the processing centers, and they're accompanied by translators. So what's going on here? Why have Delta Air booked up my flight with illegal migrants? Have these people been vetted? Have they gone through TSA? Because since 9/11, I've had to go through all these background checks and pre-flight checks. I've had to take my shoes off, but these people just seem to be walked through and given the same privileges. How strange. Well, she noticed this, and then Delta representatives started tailing her at the airport lounge, harassing her, obviously trying to stop her from reporting on it. Very odd.
The airline.
The airline.
Because it's not like, the FBI or the American version of a border force or Homeland Security. No, the airline.
The airline were tailing her.
Weird, right?
Yeah.
It's just weird.
Clearly, they're being subsidized by the federal government.
Well,
These are very lucrative contracts they don't want getting out and losing out on. So Ashley, because she flies a lot to various conferences, flies in first class or premier seating. And she sat there, and the migrant from the detention center with his transparent bag, her transparent bag rather, is just sat next to her. The migrants who broke into the country illegally, haven't paid anything, have been given premium seating alongside Delta's valued customers. So they are breaking into your country, taking your money, and getting privileged seating on flights at your expense. And the airlines and the government don't want you talking about it. Very curious. So it's happening all across the country. This is also in Arizona. This is Tucson. This is Bill Malugan, who works for Fox News. And he's saying, flying out of Tucson Airport tonight, the terminal's full of illegal immigrants released into the US with their DHS paperwork. So you can see where the people have come from. They've come from the migrant detention centers, but it's all right. Don't notice. It's just a conspiracy theory. And the migrants started walking into women's bathrooms.
So they've already integrated.
Yeah, the rapey migrant is a personality type, genuinely. It doesn't matter which country they enter. It seems that because these people, you don't know where they're from, you don't know who they are, they have predatory intent. And so if you don't vet them and you just let them into the country, criminals are going to exploit that at the behest of vulnerable women and children.
I think they're probably too stupid to know the difference.
It's got an image. you can't excuse it. Genuinely, don't give them any leeway. It's not like they can't speak English, they can't read male and female. That's
not really giving them the benefit of the doubt, because I don't doubt there's malicious intent, but also it may well be blended with stupidity as well.
Also, group of African migrants from Guinea. What are you doing at the southern border? How curious.
Yeah, I thought that is one of the sort of genuinely curious things, that it seems that there's people from sub-Saharan Africa or the Indian subcontinent crossing the Texas or New Mexico border. People from all over the world. Curiouser and curiouser. Genuinely, how does that come about?
I wonder how they flew there.
How did they get to Mexico then? Or what's the story there? What's the
if there's someone with lots of money that would do that? I don't know.
Well, genuinely,
is it NGOs, Soros type stuff?
Yes,
that's what I was
Soros
alluding
do
to.
organise the caravans during the Trump administration. The Open Society Foundation admitted to busing loads of Guatemalans and Hondurans up through Mexico to create surges at the border. So that
makes some sense.
Yes.
But you take people from India or Bangladesh or the Congo or Nigeria and then get them to Mexico.
Yes.
That would be, NGOs are doing that as well.
That is presumably what it is, because internally the NGOs are conducting this, and we've got evidence for that here. I would be interested to see if there were further investigations into exactly which NGOs are facilitating taking people from other continents to the border. We haven't covered exactly which ones in this segment, but if I hear of anything, obviously I'll bring it to you. But this is Nuance Bro. This is him, again, just reporting it from on the ground. Also Current Revolt for filming this. So these are just people going around airports, taking their phones out and posting it to Twitter. And of course, it's caught the attention of folks like Elon Musk, so these videos have been shared around. But it's so present, so undeniable, so it's across loads of states and loads of airports that it's a massive problem. And this isn't being ginned up out of nowhere, but there you go. All right, so he notes in this that apparently one of the NGOs in particular that was cited by these migrants was the Catholic Community Services of Southern Arizona Incorporated. I'm going to blame the Jesuits here because I'm just going to presume it's them because they usually find it all. But this is them. It's not. The Jesuits have within their charter.
We got a biter.
It's autism. Within their charter, they have the global abolition of poverty as an aim. So they're basically the avenue for communist infiltration into the Catholic Church. So they are cited by the Arizona Department of Child Safety and the Immigration Advocates Network as sources. So this is an NGO deeply entrenched with the Arizona state government and the other NGO Open Borders bureaucracy. And they have an address on their website that's publicly listed, as you can see there. So you can send them an email or a letter if you're not particularly content about that. Keep it peaceful and polite, but make sure that if you're an Arizona resident, don't appreciate your state being flooded with random illegal migrants who enter women's toilets. But also happens in O'Hare Airport in Chicago. So this is Libs of TikTok.
Blimey, that looks like a bed shop, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's...
Well, not so much now. It looks like a homeless encampment. But
yeah, it looks like one of the streets of LA.
It's appalling.
Everywhere's going to become California, eventually.
Ugh.
Yeah, and there's a reason for that. It's because Democrat states want to pack their populations to give them electoral college advantage ahead of the fact that loads of people have fled Democrat states for places like Tennessee, Texas, and Florida, which would swing it in Trump's favor.
King of the ashes of America. What a disgusting notion.
Yep. So also in Phoenix, Arizona, this is James O'Keefe, just walks up, interviews a young man with a child accompanying him, and he says that Joe Biden is giving us an opportunity. So he's citing the Biden administration, encouraging him to come. He's also trying to interview a man who's bussing the migrants around and shuts the door on his face.
I remember actually covering when Biden assumed office, and there was this massive spike in illegal immigration because he said, "Oh, come to America, the doors are open," and then they actually had to roll it back because something like 100,000 Haitians just turned up in like a week.
Kamala Harris flew out to, I believe it was Guatemala, and said, "Do not come."
Mm-hmm.
They had to walk it back. But once you've said that, you can't
damage is
discourage
done.
people. Yeah. So James has been on this because James does great on the ground investigation, and he went to a jet limo bus driver outside Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, and the bus driver had a cordial conversation with James, and the drivers themselves are not really let in on the program. It seems like there's not much communication so that this sort of thing can't get out. You can't source which detention centers they've come from, which states they're going to. it just seems to be trundling along. But when he spoke to him, he said he works for Jet Limousine and makes multiple trips per day. He doesn't know who's contracted him, but when James says to him, okay, who can I get in touch with? He goes, you're going to have to talk up with the city or the state. So there is some sort of local government coordination with the federal government and these NGOs to redistrict the migrants somewhere. So interesting stuff. This is also in Texas, because of course, another border state. This is Taylor Hanson. He said an American Airlines rep, so it's not just Delta, it's American Airlines as well, getting these contracts, told him that more illegal migrants fly out of the airport on a daily basis than Americans now. And he also said, are they screened for infectious diseases like tuberculosis or COVID? You know, that thing that you were locked down for 2 years and stopped going everywhere because you were so at risk for. And they just went, no, not here. Right, okay, so they could not just be bringing drugs and crime and unvetted minors across the border, but also infectious diseases. That
Well,
sounds like a great
TB's,
plan.
potentially lethal. It's a horrible thing. You've got to take a drug treatment for 6 months just to get rid of it. So to let that in the country potentially is a catastrophic failure to keep Americans safe.
Yeah, and I think it was what was it? It was Title 42, which was the emergency COVID legislation that ensured that all southern border apprehensions were turned back. Biden ended up repealing that, but it was on the basis of the COVID lockdown that was meant to be stopping people from coming across. So pick your poison, I suppose.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's just a very quick thing. I was just going to say that one of the reasons that human beings have an innate distrust of the sort of outsider, if you will, as explained through evolutionary psychology, is that they carry diseases. And it seems to be something that has been selected for, that the people who are distrustful of outsiders are less likely to die of disease.
This is a parasite stress hypothesis where a lot of the time more authoritarian measures or more in-group preferential measures like strict border controls are enforced on the basis of public health concerns or infectious disease.
Sorry, Bo.
You mentioned, or the bus driver mentioned, that you need to appeal to at the state level or even the federal level. I think it was mentioned the DHS, the Department for Homeland Security. I think they're in charge ultimately of the borders. It's Mayorkas, isn't it? That's the Secretary of State for that.
He's a
And
mayor. Mayor of Chicago, I believe, isn't he? No, wait.
I'm pretty sure Mayorkas is Homeland Security. Anyway, it's at that level where there's Senate hearings and congressional hearings and all sorts of things trying to hold his feet to the fire.
Yeah, he's Secretary for Homeland Security.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't think of what I was
And
thinking.
just the actual government trying to get him to do his job, and him just endlessly prevaricating and just saying, yeah, we're trying, yeah, no, and then eventually we'll admit things, and it's just a complete dereliction of duty. Like, he seems to me to be some kind of a true sort of enemy of the people of the United States. How they can't remove him. I did see something just the other day, again, someone in the Congress or Senate calling for his impeachment and removal and even prosecution. But whether that will ever happen, or it's sort of too late, it's already happening or has happened.
I mean, he's not an enemy to their democracy, is he? Because he's actually swinging the ballot boxes in the favor of the Democrats.
Right, yeah, he's a Biden pick.
Yes.
Right, yeah, so they've very deliberately put him there and kept him there.
Yeah. So it's controlled demolition, not just incompetence. You're right. He's an absolute traitor, but he's not a traitor to the regime. That's why the regime are more than happy to keep him there. Again, just mentioning American Airlines, they're also giving priority seating to the immigrants as well. So you'll be sat next to someone possibly with TB who can't speak English in first class. They said that they're from Guatemala and he just wants to work and study. Great. And he said that he's going to be shipped to Washington. Interesting that they're shipping them to Democrat states rather than just leaving them on the Republican border towns as well. There's a reason. Anyway, so the pilots for American Airlines told Ashley St. Clair, Whistleblowers, that they are required to download software for their phones that ensures that all of their phone activity is tracked so that they don't blow the whistle on this stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. So they clearly want to keep this quiet. Oh, just on the prior bit as well, when Taylor was asking these migrants, they said that none of them speak English. They say they were transported, had no problems with cartels, and, quote, interacted with an NGO who bought their flight. So it certainly seems the NGOs are bringing them across continents or at least countries to then bring them into the United States and then hand them off to another NGO to fly them into a different state. So there's a chain of command here. If you're also wondering, well, at least they're not going to cause any troubles on the flights. There are so many border crossings that air marshals are being taken off flights and stuck at the border. So that's not good. Also, the boarding passes have no name given on them. You don't even know the names of the people coming across. So they board the plane. You don't have to vet them at the border. You don't have to vet them while on the plane. If I remember rightly, we at least threw the names of the 9/11 hijackers. Like, yeah, genuinely, would you want to get on a flight in America at this point if it's packed full of illegal immigrants who don't give their own name? Do you know they've been through security checks? Do you know who they are? Do you know what they might do? I don't want to be hyperbolic, but
The only flights I'm really comfortable getting are ones internal in Britain, really.
well, yeah, but like most Americans, a lot of Americans get internal flights in the States. It's the bus of the sky. Don't even need a passport for it. Now there are random unvetted foreigners on your internal flights. Your own country is just not safe.
If terrorists, which may be more likely to be crossing the southern border because of the strikes in Yemen, and they said that there are going to be retributions against America and the UK, then they could be flown to the southern border by an NGO, cross the border, be flown to an American city, and carry out a terrorist attack, seemingly without any barriers in their way. Yeah.
So, really major concern there. Now, of course, this is just, we've got to take Ashley's word for it. But then James O'Keefe actually obtained one. So we've got it here. And it says in the text, please help me print my boarding pass. I am a refugee and I do not speak the language. Thank you. It's been automatically printed. So don't have to speak English, don't have to give their name, not subjected to any checks. Okay, not great that. Now, we've known this has been going on for a little while. This was 2 years ago. This was a Biden whistleblower who was speaking specifically about a child trafficking operation from the border. So this was spoken to Savannah Hernandez, it's printed in the Post Millennial. And she interviewed an anonymous whistleblower who works as a travel youth care worker for a federally funded contractor called MVM Incorporated. He said, quote, tens of thousands of unaccompanied migrant children are being bussed and flown throughout the US, being handed off to unvetted adult supervisors. He went on to share that just in his office alone, employees will move up to 5,000 children per week. MVM Incorporated has 3 other offices throughout Texas in El Paso, Houston, and San Antonio. Between all 4 offices, the whistleblower speculates that around 8 to 10,000 children are moved every week, with estimates that they reach up to 40,000 per month. And so because of the volume of border crossings as well, he said that new hires for MVM aren't given proper background checks. A lot of people get hired and their background hasn't even come in yet. So you don't know who brought them to the border. You don't know who these children are. You don't know who might be accompanying them because they don't have to give their own name. They don't have to speak English. And the people who are working in the processing centers also aren't being vetted for things like if they have any child safeguarding risks.
Fresh blood for the Democrats, isn't it?
Well, quite. Why are you obsessed with trafficking children? Like, that's not even hyperbolic. You've got a giant NGO government infrastructure that's obsessed with flying children and handing them off to God knows who around the US.
Yeah, the Department for Homeland Security has got some questions to answer.
Yeah. So
except they just refuse to.
Yes, quite. They've given MVM $136 million in 2021 for the transport of migrant families and unaccompanied minors in government custody. They also served as a contractor for the CIA and NSA in Iraq. I'm sure there's no connection there whatsoever. What was that about economic hitmen you once covered with Dan? How curious that is. The New York Post also broke a story on this. So this was in October 2021. The Post saw 2 planes laying at Westchester County Airport with most of the passengers who appeared to get off were children and teens, with a small portion appearing to be men in their 20s. A post-analysis of online flight tracking data suggests around 2,000 of the underage migrants arrived at the airport outside White Plains on 21 flights since August the 8th. The most recent figures from the US Customs and Border Patrol show that just during July and August, and this was 2021, 37,805 unaccompanied minors were caught entering the US from Mexico. Again, 40,000 minors every week being flown to random states, given to who knows, and just disappearing into the system. So even if you weren't just opposed to the fact that your demographics are being changed and your voting is being disenfranchised by random, unnamed, unverified adults, where are the children disappearing to?
I feel like it's something a bit beyond worrying.
It's
sort of
horrifying.
a
yeah.
monumental crime, like a civilizational level crime. This is.
In any other era, this would be a scandal that would last forever, and it's not even in the news that significantly, is it? Is you get one article here and there, and that's it.
I'm sure the Republicans will write a really strongly worded letter about this.
I hope that in future decades, people will look back at this period, the sort of the very beginning, first few decades of the 21st century, and see it as sort of an age of Satan or something. Like
Speaking my language.
an age of evil, where the world is being controlled by completely evil people.
Spot on. There's no other excuse for it. Now, obviously, I will be accused of saying it's conspiracy theory for saying they're trying to change voting demographics. It's not like it's just been the Democrat Party platform. But back before the narrative was controlled, back when things were a little bit more honest, I've got this old article here from the 2008 election from CBS News. So again, not a far-right outlet. Illegal immigration affects electoral votes. So not just that if you don't do signature or ID verification, it's that it changes the demographics of the Electoral College. So I'm just going to read from here. Illegal immigrants don't have an effect on the popular vote, but they are changing the electoral vote, and this benefits then presidential candidate Obama. Hispanic voters historically vote Democrat, and as reported by USA Today in July 2008, Hispanics will become decisive swing voters in future elections, with the Hispanic population set to double to 30% by 2042 because of relatively higher birth rate and immigration, and leaders like John McCain and Obama supporting amnesty for illegal aliens. This traditionally Democratic-leaning population will likely tip future elections in favor of Democrats. Indeed, the effects of Hispanic voters on this election, 2008, are already being felt. Pew Research showed 66% of Hispanics favored Obama to McCain's 23%. USA Today reported the Hispanic vote is now large enough to determine outcomes in key battleground states like Colorado, New Mexico, Nevada, and Florida. And it specifically determined them in California after the 80s because Ronald Reagan did a mass amnesty program, which then made California permanently blue. Despite him winning the governor's race and as a presidential candidate, California as a Republican, and even up until the mid-2000s, they had Arnold Schwarzenegger as a Republican governor. Now, it's just guaranteed to be blue forever because, of course, if you have mass illegal Hispanics that are then suddenly legal, they will vote in favor of Democrat policies that will enfranchise their family members in the future. So they're just going to pack their states with illegal immigrants, awaiting a second Biden term, where then they say, well, we've had a mass crisis at the border. We've got so many illegal immigrants here. We can't deport them all. That would be heartless. So how about we just hand citizenships to the ones we're here now, and then we'll get tough on the border. And it just so happens they'll always vote Democrat. And we know this is going to happen. It's what AOC just turned around and said. You can either fix the border crisis by trying to build a wall, or you can fix it by documenting people. That's what safe legal routes means. It means giving voting rights to people that turned up yesterday, that they're already giving handouts to, paid for by working Americans, and then they will vote to import more people to give more money and create a permanently leftist state. That's their plan. It's nuts.
But even the leftists that are in support of this, their wages are going to be stagnant or even go down because of increasing numbers of people in the workforce, as well as the price of housing going up. So they're going to feel the consequences of their own suicidal decisions as well.
But they don't understand the solution, so they're just going to vote for more stimulus checks, more money printing, and more state handouts, so that manufactures consent for expanding the size of the state. And speaking of, you don't even need to enfranchise them, because it turns out Arizona say you do not need to submit proof of citizenship for federal-only ballots. So that has only federal races and no state, county, or local races. So in the 2024 election, if you're in Arizona, you can't vote for your local state rep or your congressman, but you can vote in the presidential election and not require proof of citizenship. So in Arizona, illegal aliens will be voting for Joe Biden. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is printed in front of you. Mental. All right, so how are the Republicans responding? I'll quickly wrap this up. So America First Legal have launched a inquiry into this, particularly because the TSA obviously interrogate American citizens, but they don't interrogate this lot. And combined with Dan's recent segment earlier in the week, where now you've got diversity hire pilots and bits falling off of planes, would you have much faith in the American airline system? I wouldn't want to get on a plane right now. So I suggest some other airlines that aren't taking federal government contracts might want to support this effort. Otherwise, their bottom line will take a hit. Matt Gaetz has also called on the CEO of Delta to testify before Congress, asking if Delta has ever transported illegals on behalf of NGOs. How did NGOs reimburse Delta for the tickets? Does the reimbursement come from the federal government? And have the TSA ever required ID checks for illegals? Because that would be pretty good. Follow Ashley for further developments, because she says that she's got some whistleblowers coming forward. And so we should hear more about this in the coming weeks. But sorry, Americans, it turns out that a bunch of undocumented children and unnamed illegals who may or may not actually be terrorists are flooding your country to permanently change your electoral and demographic map. All the best with that.
If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Lads Hours, this one on golden penis syndrome. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.